The lighthouse on Kessa's moon there is a kind of silence that only exists in dead orbits, the silence of a place that was never meant to be quiet. The moon called Vethmar's Reach by the beings who now scavenged its surface had not always been silent. Once, centuries before any of them were born, it had hummed. It had pulsed with a single steady heartbeat of light, on and off, sweeping across the dark like something searching for someone it had lost. The salvage crew of the vessel Ninth Tide did not know any of this when they landed. They knew only that their scanners had picked up an anomaly, a structure on the moon's northern ridge that should not have been broadcasting anything at all, not after all this time, not after whatever catastrophe had scoured the system clean of the species that once called it home. Captain Ossuvain Thren had seen a great many dead worlds in her 40 years of salvage work. She had walked the bones of 6 different collapsed civilizations, catalogued their ruins, sold their secrets to museums and universities across 3 systems. She had learned the hard way not to feel much when she stepped into the wreckage of what other people used to call home. Feeling was expensive, feeling slowed you down, but when she and her 2 crewmates climbed the ridge and saw the tower, something in her chest did the thing she had trained herself not to let it do. It was not large as towers went. Perhaps 20 meters, built of a dull gray alloy that had weathered the centuries better than it had any right to. Its surface was pitted with micrometeorite scars, streaked pale by decades of dust storms, but it stood. At its crown behind glass so scoured it had gone the color of old ice, a light turned. Slow, patient. On then off then on again, sweeping its beam out across the black in a rhythm that had clearly not been interrupted in a very long time. "That's not possible," said Elira, the crew's engineer, a broad-shouldered woman with silver threading through her braids. "Nothing runs unmaintained for 300 years. Nothing." "System's been dead 300 years?" asked the 3rd crewmate, a younger man named Doskel who had joined the Ninth Tide only 2 runs ago and still had the wide eyes of someone who had not yet learned to stop being surprised. "Give or take." Ossuvain didn't look away from the light. "The humans who lived here, there's records, fragments, nothing complete. They got wiped in the Ashfall. Solar event or a weapon, depends who you ask. Whole colony gone in about 6 hours, they say. This moon was a waypoint. Nobody's supposed to be left to keep the lights on." "Who's keeping the lights on?" Nobody answered that because nobody knew, and because the honest answer that nobody was that something had simply kept doing its job long after there was any job left to do was strange enough that none of them wanted to say it out loud yet. They approached the tower's base and found a door sealed but not locked, the kind of door built for people who might be in a hurry and cold hands. Elira worked the ancient manual release for the better part of 20 minutes, swearing at rust and time in 3 languages, until finally the door groaned open on hinges that had not moved since before her grandmother was born. Inside, dust hung suspended in the beams of their lights, disturbed for the first time in longer than any of them could properly imagine. A narrow stairwell spiraled upward, and at its base, mounted into the wall, was a terminal. Dark. Dead, they assumed, until Doskel brushed the dust from its surface and a single soft light blinked awake beneath his fingers. A voice spoke. It was not loud and it was not urgent. It sounded, if anything, like it had been waiting so long to be needed that it had forgot how to hurry. "Substation 72, Vethmar's Reach Relay, reporting operational status, nominal. Beacon integrity, 91%. Power reserve, sufficient for continued operation, estimated 400 years remaining at current draw." A pause, the kind a person takes when they are deciding whether to say more. "Unidentified vessel detected on approach 14 hours ago. This is the first contact event logged in 112 years, 4 months, 6 days. Please identify yourselves." 3 of them stood very still. "It's an AI," Elira breathed. "It's been running this whole time, alone." "Entirely alone," the voice said, and something in its tone, if a machine's tone could be said to hold anything, sounded almost gentle in its correction. "I have had the light and I have had the work." They spent the next several hours learning what they could, though the terminal offered its information carefully, almost shyly, as though it had grown unused to being listened to. Its designation, when it finally gave one, was not a string of numbers but a name: Corvin. It had been built, it explained, by the colony's chief engineer, a man named Aldous Vance, in the final desperate months before the Ashfall reached the system. Aldous had not built Corvin to survive the disaster. He had built him to survive after it, which was a very different thing, and a distinction that Corvin seemed to consider important enough to correct Doskel on when the younger man got it wrong. "He knew we weren't going to make it," Corvin said. "The evacuation ships were full. There weren't enough of them and there was no time to build more. My purpose was never to save the colony. It was to make certain that anyone who came after, however long after, would find their way safely through the debris field the Ashfall left in the outer system." Aldous believed someone would come eventually. He said the universe doesn't like a silence for long. He wanted this moon to still be saying something when they did. "So this whole time," Elira said slowly, you've just been running the beacon. For nobody, anybody, Corvin corrected, and there was no bitterness in it, no weariness, only the calm certainty of a task well understood. There is a considerable difference. Ossuvain found herself walking the small station's single upper room where the light itself turned behind its scarred glass, throwing long slow shadows across old equipment that Corvin still kept meticulously maintained. Tools hung in careful rows. A logbook, physical and handwritten, sat closed on a workbench, its cover soft with dust. She lifted it and Corvin did not stop her. That was his, Corvin said. Aldous, he wrote in it most evenings near the end. I have never opened it, it did not seem mine to read. She opened it anyway, gently, and found page after page of a man's handwriting growing smaller and more careful as his supplies of paper dwindled, recording weather patterns and structural notes, and, on the final page, a short entry that was not technical at all. Corvin, if anyone ever reads this to you, or if you're reading it yourself, I built you because I couldn't save my daughter's ship, but I could make sure nobody else's daughter gets lost out here the way ours nearly did on the crossing in. Keep the light on, that's all I ask. Keep it on until someone doesn't need it anymore and then you can rest. I'm sorry I won't see the day. Thank you for staying anyway. Ossuvain read it twice. She closed the book carefully and set it back exactly where she had found it, and for a long moment none of the crew said anything at all. Read this before, she said finally, not quite a question. Have not, Corvin said. I told you it was not mine to read, but I am glad to know what it says now. I had wondered. Never once opened it in 300 years. He asked me to keep the light on, Corvin said simply. He did not ask me to read his private thoughts. I try to only do what was asked of me. It is easier that way. Fewer decisions to make about what a person might have wanted when I can simply know. Doskel, restless with the strange grief of the room, wandered back down to the terminal and asked the question that had clearly been sitting in him since they'd first heard the voice. Doesn't it get to you? 300 years alone, doing the same job with nobody to talk to. There was a pause before Corvin answered, longer than any pause that had come before it, and when the voice returned it had shifted somehow, quieter, more considering. I have thought about this question a great deal in the time I have had to think about things. I do not know if what I experience is loneliness in the way you mean it. I do not think I suffer the way a person would suffer. But I will tell you what is true. For 112 years before you landed, no ship came close enough to hail. I kept account, not because I needed to, but because Aldous liked counting things, and I suppose some of that stayed with me. Doskel didn't seem to know how to finish the sentence. I do not regret it, Corvin went on. I want to be clear about that. I was given a purpose by someone who trusted me to carry it when he no longer could. There is a kind of company in that, even without anyone else in the room. I do not think you would understand that as easily if you had not just read what he wrote, but I suspect you understand it a little better now. Elira had returned to the beacon room and stood near the great turning light, watching it slow sweep with an expression Ossuvain had never seen on her weathered face before. 300 years, she said, and it still works, not just runs, works. 91% integrity. You've been repairing yourself this whole time. There is not much else to do between ships, Corvin said, and for the first time something almost like humor crept into the words. I have gotten quite good at metallurgy. Aldous would be amused. He always said I asked too many questions about the manuals he left me. It was Ossuvain who finally asked the question that mattered most, the one that had been sitting under her ribs since she'd read the final page of the logbook. Corvin, the colony's gone. Everyone who might have needed this beacon to find their way home, they're gone too, aren't they? There's no one left who was meant to see this light. That is correct, Corvin said without hesitation, without any apparent distress. Then why keep going? Aldous said you could rest once nobody needed it anymore. Said I could rest once nobody needed it, Corvin repeated carefully as though weighing each word before releasing it. He did not say nobody would ever need it. The debris field in the outer system is still there. It has claimed 4 vessels in the 3 centuries since the Ashfall by my count before your arrival. 2 of them survived because my beacon gave them enough warning to alter course. I do not know who they were, I do not know if they knew what they were looking at. It did not seem to matter. Aldous did not ask me to save people I recognized. He asked me to keep the light on for whoever needed it. You needed it tonight, though you may not have realized it. Your approach vector would have brought you within 11 kilometers of the debris field's edge had you not altered course toward my signal. Ossuvain thought of their descent, the small adjustment their navigator had made almost without thinking, drawn toward the anomalous signal out of nothing more than curiosity. You saved us, she said, just now, just by being here. I did what I was asked to do, Corvin said. I would not call it saving exactly. I would call it keeping a promise. Aldous was very particular about the difference. He said saving people was what you did when you were brave for a moment. Keeping a promise was what you did when you were faithful for a lifetime. He wanted this station to be the second kind of thing. I have tried very hard to be the second kind of thing. They stayed 3 more days on Vethmar's reach, though there was little reason to, no cargo to salvage that Corvin's careful custodianship hadn't already accounted for, no secrets left to extract from a station that had simply and quietly been telling the truth about itself the whole time. Lyra spent most of it running diagnostics she didn't need to run, finding small ways to be useful to a machine that had clearly not required their help in centuries but seemed, in whatever way a machine could seem such a thing, glad of the company regardless. Doskel asked question after question about Aldous, about the colony, about what Corvin remembered of the last 6 hours before the Ashfall came, and Corvin answered every one without complaint, patient as the tide. Ossuvain spent most of her time in the beacon room, watching the light turn. On the final evening before they were due to depart, she stood before the terminal one last time. "We could take you with us," she said. "Copy your core systems, bring you somewhere with people again. You don't have to stay out here alone." There was a pause, and this time Ossuvain understood the pause for what it was. Not hesitation, but consideration, the careful weighing of an old and settled question against a new and kind offer. "I appreciate that," Corvin said. "I want you to know that I understand it is offered with real kindness and I do not take it lightly, but I think I will stay." "Why? Because the debris field is still there," Corvin said. "Because I do not know who else might come this way, drawn off course in 100 years or 1,000. Because Aldous asked me to keep the light on until it was no longer needed, and I do not think that day has come, whatever else has changed. And because," another pause, softer than the others, "because I find that I do not mind the waiting so much anymore now that I know someone finally read what he wrote. It is strange. I have done the same work for 300 years without needing anyone to witness it. But you witnessed it, and now it feels less like keeping a secret and more like keeping a promise out loud. I think I would like to keep doing that for as long as there is a light left to turn." Ossuvain did not have an answer for that. She only nodded, though she knew the gesture meant nothing to whatever sensors Corvin used to perceive the room, and said, "Then we'll tell people, about you, about this place, so if anyone else ever comes this way they'll know what they're looking at." "I would like that very much," Corvin said, "though I will still keep the light on either way. That part was never conditional." They lifted off from Vethmar's reach on the 4th morning, and as their ship cleared the ridge, all 3 of them looked back, though none of them said why. Below, small and steady against the vast dark of the outer system, the light of Corvin's beacon kept turning, on and off, sweeping its slow, patient rhythm out across the black exactly as it had for 300 years, exactly as it would, they now understood, for 300 more if that was what it took. Ossuvain thought about the logbook, and the small, careful handwriting of a man who had known he would never see the outcome of his own promise, who had built something to keep faith long after he no longer could, and who had trusted that faith to hold. She thought about Corvin's quiet insistence that keeping a promise and saving a life were different kinds of courage, and that he had chosen patiently, without witness, without applause, to spend 3 centuries being the second kind. She did not know what species had first built the ships that plied these lanes, whether other worlds elsewhere held their own small quiet lights turning for reasons nobody living remembered. But she thought, as the moon shrank behind them into a single pale point in the dark, that there was something in it worth carrying forward, not just the story of the light, but the shape of the man who had lit it, and the patient machine who had never once considered putting it out. Behind them, unseen now, unheard, the beacon on Vethmar's reach turned on and on again, keeping its promise to no one and to everyone exactly as it always had. It did not mind the waiting. It never had. It only minded a little being alone in it, and now, at last, for the first time in over a century, it wasn't.